Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hold it underneath. Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Dimitri, can you turn this down a little bit? It's on the green one. Just a little bit. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to be reading chapter 16. And we're going to chant the verses again. So we'll be on page 615. And then we're going to skip into the middle of the purport. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now, before we begin, can someone take this sheet from him because he doesn't need it anymore? Thank you. Okay. We're on page 615. 615. Hopefully you don't have the one book that has a different page. Okay. Uh-oh. Yeah, beginning of the chapter 16. On this 13th day of October 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are at the beginning of chapter 16, entitled The Divine and Demonic Natures. We're studying texts 1 to 3, and we're in the middle of the purport, but we'll chant the verse again, and I'll read the translation. So I think you can all chant with me. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Abhyam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Abhyam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Abhyam Sattva Sangshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi. You have the, yeah, he actually has the one book that's different. Beginning of chapter 16. Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Dimitri, start off. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Abhaya Sattva Sangshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Prabhu, Haribo, can you chant? Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Abhyam Sattva Sangshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. No. Anyone else? Michelle, you try. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Abhyam Sattva Sangshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Anyone in Zoom land? Hello.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha.
Abhyam Sattva Sangshuddhi.
Abhyam Sattva Sangshuddhi.
Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi.
Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi.
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha.
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha.
Svadhyayastapa Arjavam.
Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Okay, I'm going to read. Oh, someone else? No. Okay.
No, there's no one else.
Okay, very good. I will now read the translation and we'll skip to the part of the purport that I'm in. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, nonviolence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharat, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. Now before we continue, these double fans need to be on. It's too quiet in here. And is that door open? It's a crack. Thank you. Okay. So, we read part of this purport. It's quite long, and Srila Prabhupada is going through systematically explaining each one of these saintly qualities. And he explained the first three, I believe, which are pertaining to the sannyasi: fearlessness, purification of one's existence, and cultivation of spiritual knowledge. And now charity, and charity, as we'll learn, is meant mostly for the householders, because the sannyasis, they don't have anything to give except pure knowledge. So this, we're at the last paragraph on page 618. That's where we'll pick up the purport. The next item is charity. Charity is meant for the householders. The householders should earn a livelihood by an honorable means and spend 50% of their income to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. Thus, a householder should give in charity to institutional societies that are engaged in that way. Charity should be given to the right receiver. There are different kinds of charity, as will be explained later on. Charity in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Charity in the mode of goodness is recommended by the scriptures, but charity in the modes of passion and ignorance is not recommended because it is simply a waste of money. Charity should be given only to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. That is charity in the mode of goodness. Then, as far as Dhamma, self-control, is concerned, it is not only meant for other orders of religious society, but is especially meant for the householder. Although he has a wife, a householder should not use his senses for sex life unnecessarily. There are restrictions for the householders, even in sex life, which should only be engaged in for the propagation of children. If he does not require children, he should not enjoy sex life with his wife. Modern society enjoys sex life with contraceptive methods or more abominable methods to avoid the responsibility of children. This is not in the transcendental quality, but is demoniac. If anyone, even if he is a householder, wants to make progress in spiritual life, he must control his sex life and should not beget a child without the purpose of serving Krishna. If he is able to beget children who will be in Krishna consciousness, one can produce hundreds of children. But without this capacity, one should not indulge only for some pleasure. Sacrifice is another item to be performed by the householders, because sacrifices require a large amount of money. Those in other orders of life, namely brahmacharya, vanaprastha, and sannyas, have no money. They live by begging. So performance of different types of sacrifice is meant for the householders. They should perform Agnihotra sacrifices as enjoined in the Vedic literature. But such sacrifices at the present moment are very expensive, and it is not possible for any householder to perform them. The best sacrifice recommended in this age is called Sankirtan Yajna. This Sankirtan Yajna, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the best and most inexpensive sacrifice. Everyone can adopt it and derive benefit. So 3 items, namely charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice, are meant for the householder. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So just to get a little bit of an overview of what this chapter is all about. It's entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures. So Krishna is, at the beginning here, these first 3 verses, he describes 26 qualities that are divine. Now divine means that they further the mission of human life. Human life is very rare, it's very valuable. Because in this form of life, the first understanding is that we've had many lives before, and we'll have many lives in the future, unless we go back to God, then we'll have one form. But we're not going to die. Nobody dies. Najayate, mriyate, bhakati. No one is born and no one dies. Everyone is eternal. But obviously the bodies are born and the bodies die. And when we identify completely with this specific body that we happen to be in, then we feel as if we're dying. We feel as if we're being born. So the first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita is you're not the body. That we're going through, even in this lifetime, different bodies. Everyone can remember when they're like 10 years old, right? If you dredge your memory, you remember certain things, right? So you had a different body, you had a different mind, it was a whole different. It said that each cell in the body, they've done studies, changes over 7 years. There's a replacement going on. So actually we have, every 7 years we have a new body. But it's pretty much like the other body, and we're the same person inside, so we think, oh, now I'm, now I am 20 years old, now I am 30 years old, now I'm 40 years old. This is the grand illusion that Maya Devi puts in our way, is that we are identifying with the body. Now, I don't think I said Om Jnana, did I? I did. Okay, thanks. So in this chapter, Krishna is delineating the divine and demonic natures. The divine qualities lead toward purification and for elevation toward the mission of getting free of birth and death and ending our sojourn through so many different bodies, and all of them produce suffering. If nothing else, we got birth, old age, disease, and death. None of those are really pleasant. We forgot about birth by Krishna's mercy, but being in a womb for so long and taking birth and being completely helpless, it's not pleasant, So that, and then old age, I can attest to you, it's not pleasant. Disease, we all have experience, you don't have to wait for old age. COVID is here. Yeah. Do you want to get born again to face another pandemic? And then the kicker to all of it is death. Everything you try to do in this life, based on the body, accumulate this, establish so much relationships, get so much name and fame, whatever it may be, is all taken away by death. And oftentimes before death, gradually all your beauty is taken away, your everything. So it's a no-win situation. But we have, when we're able to come in touch with this knowledge, that first of all, understanding our situation, and then having been given a system by which we can progressively get disentangled from our involvement with this matter, we should take advantage of it. Not a moment to lose. So now he's describing the different qualities, especially according to different stations in life. So as I mentioned, he began with the sannyasi, who especially needs to be fearless, abhayam, because the sannyasis just completely depend on Krishna. When a perfect example is Srila Prabhupada. When he came to America, he had no money, he had no contacts. Can you imagine? We don't want to get on an airplane and go to some place where we have no contacts, we don't know where we're going to stay. You all arrange that ahead of time, right? So that you go there, okay, I know I'm going to this hotel and everything, Prabhupada didn't have any of that. He did have one contact where he could stay for a few weeks, and he took advantage of that. But otherwise, he came to America and New York City. So that's sannyas life. You depend on Krishna, fully on Krishna, and he proved that it works. Sattva sangshuddhi means that he works always toward the purification of his existence, being very conscious of not doing anything that will contaminate his consciousness or stop his progress back to Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada is purity personified, the sattva sangshuddhi. Sangshuddhi means complete purification. And then jnana yoga vyavastiti, always cultivating spiritual knowledge and giving spiritual knowledge. That's the whole mission of the great sannyasis. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur actually revived sannyas in the Vaishnava culture, in the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Lord Chaitanya, of course, took sannyas. But it had come to the point where those who were really serious, they would take Babaji, which is not exactly sannyas. You generally go to Vrindavan, and you live very simply and just wander around Vrindavan, but you're not preaching. You're not going out around the world, Prabhupada mentioned several times, trying to bring those who are completely ignorant to Krishna consciousness. So the sannyas is very important. So then the sannyasis, as well as the other two spiritual orders, the brahmacharis and the vanaprasthas, they're supported by the householders. Householders, they have a business or they have some land, and they make some money. And so they can give charity. So therefore, the first quality, dhanam, that's a charity, is meant for the householders. And Prabhupada makes the point, it's important that you know where charity should be applied. Because you may be very generous, but you're giving money to someone who's just going to waste it or go and buy some intoxication or something like that. Charity, welfare work is, just try to take an overview. I mean, there are many kind people, and they're doing good work. They're helping others to feed them, or get an education, or whatever it may be. So this is on the good side. This is called sukriti. It's not sinful. But what is the best welfare work? No matter how, if you feed somebody, they get hungry again tomorrow, And eventually I'll say, okay, so we'll teach them how to plant crops. That'll be better. Okay, but sure, but that'll end at the latest when they die. They leave the body. Then they're still bound up in this puzzle, this prison house. So if you give them the knowledge by which they can practice devotional service, bhakti yoga, so that they end their entire imprisonment in this world and they go back to Godhead, that's obviously the best welfare work that there can be. And so Srila Prabhupada emphasizes here that the best charity is to support a mission like this, where our main business is becoming Krishna conscious and giving out Krishna consciousness. This whole setup of a temple, classes, especially the books, this is all Srila Prabhupada's great mission, so that there would be an opportunity for people to learn this science, take it up themselves, advance in it, and in turn spread it. Because this is the best welfare work. So that's great charity, and the householders can do that. And then charity, self-control, and performance of sacrifice. So self-control, it probably gives a perspective from within household life. Because the household life means you have facility. So one of the good things about sannyas life is you don't even have the facility anymore. You've left that. You're living very austerely. You're wandering around. You have your danda and your water pot, you know, and you're living as simply as possible. So there's little chance for sense gratification. You're withdrawn from that, you know. But still, of course, it takes a lot of determination. But the householder, it's understood he's going to need a house. You're going to need a job. And he's going to have facility, you know, he's going to have money at his disposal. So, and you're going to have facility for sense gratification, sex life. So therefore, that has to be controlled because that is the binding force here. When we engage in simple sense gratification, we plant the seeds of further sense gratification. The pleasure that we get from that, although fleeting, is still attracting us to do it again and yet again and yet again. And this is the entanglement of material life. It is said that when one becomes advanced, it's a beautiful verse in the 11th canto, spoken by one of Lord Rishabhadev's sons, known as the 9 Yogendras. And he's describing, for those who are really surrendered in Krishna consciousness, they experience these things that he's going to list here. Bhakti padeshanubhavo viraktir anyata chaisha trika ekakala papadyamanasya yatashna taksu tushti pushti chadapayo nugasam. He gives an analogy here that being advanced in Krishna consciousness is like always feasting, you know, sitting down for a nice feast, where after a long fast, I always like to use the fast on the Shringadev's appearance day. Generally, when the Vishnu forms they appear, we honor that by fasting either half day or mostly a full day. In the Shringadev's time, because he appeared at dusk, so we fast all the way till dusk, so it's about 7 or 8 o'clock. So that's a long fast. Yeah, you're ready for feasting at that time. So you're sitting down to the feast, and it's nicely prepared, nicely offered. You know, you're with good company. The whole temple is full. Forget about, you know, after the pandemic is over, everyone's sitting, and then you're honoring the different preps, the puris and the nice sabji, and of course there's pakoras, maybe kachoris, and so you're completely absorbed. So it's describing tushti pushti chadapayo onugasam. With every bite, any onugasam, you're experiencing tushti, the satisfaction, the wonderful taste, and you know, of the transcendental prasadam, and also pushti means you're being nourished. Your body is being nourished, and at the same time, your hunger is going with each bite. So he compares that to bhakti padeshanubhavo. So bhakti in this context means the actual experience of enjoyment that comes from reciprocating service with Krishna, bhakti rasa. The bhakti rasa, which is a great spiritual pleasure. And unlike fleeting material pleasures, it can go on forever. You know, the only limitation is when we're in the material body, eventually we have to take rest and stop. But it doesn't mean, well, that's it, I'm satiated, no more Hare Krishna, forget it, I don't want to hear Hare Krishna. No, it's not like that. The more you chant, if you advance, the more, you know, it's nectar. Radheti nama navasundara siru mugdam. What does it say? You've heard this verse? An excellent fresh nectar drink with endless subtle tastes. Such is the name of Radha, by whom all 3 worlds are graced. Now, Hare, in the Hare Krishna mantra, is addressing Radha. It's a avakada for Hara, which is the goddess of fortune of Radharani. An excellent fresh nectar drink with endless subtle tastes. Such is the name of Radha, by whom all 3 worlds are graced. Condensed milk that is wonderfully delicious, thick and sweet. Such is the name of Krishna, in whom all attractions meet. Now mix these drinks, O thirsty tongue, and add the cooling, fragrant spice of love, a prize the wise will try to buy at any price. And then in every moment drink this beverage most fine, and make my heart supremely blissful, peaceful, and divine. And you can go on chanting, hours and hours. The only limit is the body limitation. But in the spiritual world, there's no end to it. That's what it means, Satchit Ananda, to have a body and an environment of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So he's describing there that the pleasure that comes from bhakti rasa is like the pleasure of taking a wonderful feast of prasadam. The taste is so pleasurable. And at the same time, you're being nourished. That's para isha anubhava. That's the second item, which means direct experience of God, of Krishna, seeing and feeling his presence in every step of life. And then then the third one is the hunger is going. That's compared to virakti anyatra cha. You're becoming detached. You're becoming detached, and you don't hanker for anything else. You know, you're through with it, with material pleasures like that. So that's a completely different quality of existence than what we have here, where we go from one pleasure to another. We're thinking about it, planning about it, working hard to get the money to buy it, you know, and then anticipating it. Then we have it, and then it's in the rearview mirror. Maybe you took a video of your trip to Disney World, and you can go over it, but it's not the same, you know. It's just frustrating. And then finally, it's all taken away by Krishna in the form of death. So what did you really gain? You didn't gain anything. You just prolonged your imprisonment in this world. So the householders, they can also be great devotees. Lord Chaitanya had many householder devotees, and they were wonderful devotees. So this is a few of the qualities that they need to have: is charity, self-control, and performance of sacrifice. And what's the best sacrifice in this age? Chanting the holy names, Sankirtan, congregational chanting. This is Lord Chaitanya's special gift. We don't have to perform these elaborate sacrifices, pay 100 Brahmins to chant the mantras precisely. You may not know this, but when you have elaborate sacrifices, you need to have the Brahmins chanting, and then there's a whole bunch of other Brahmins who are referees, who are listening to the first class of Brahmins. If they make any mistake, wait, you made a mistake. Because if you pronounce the word a little bit wrong, you can get the opposite effect. These are material sacrifices. But Krishna said, you may chant Hare Krishna. Many of us chant Hare Krishna the same way we try to chant these Bhagavad Gita verses, so you can imagine. But Krishna, this is a great phrase to remember. Bhava Grahi Janardana. You may not know what that means. Bhava is your feeling, your actual feeling of heart. Grahi means understands, and Janardana is the name for Krishna. Krishna understands your actual mood. If you're chanting sincerely, but you're not pronouncing it correctly, that's okay, as long as you try to improve over time. There's a nice story about a devotee in China, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj opened up China. China used to be completely closed back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was preaching like anything in America. He started a bus party, and soon there were a bunch of buses, big like Greyhound buses filled with devotees, and we turned them into temples. It's famously the deities who are now in Gita Nagari farm, Radha Damodar. They're I think brass deities, very beautiful. They were on the bus. They were traveling around. It's rare to have Radha Krishna deities traveling like that. Usually you'll have like Gaurnitai or Jagannath. So anyway, they were making a lot of devotees, distributing a lot of books. But at the same time, they were so fired up that they would go to a temple and they would steal all the brahmacharis. So they said, what are you doing here? You should come with us. Travel, get an adventure, see the world. So it was a big disturbance, ultimately. So finally it was shut down, probably shut it down, maybe 75, 76. So what am I going to do now, Prabhupada? You might as well tell me to go preach in China. And that was like, there's no way you're going to go to China. Nobody can go in there. So I said, yes, you should go to China. So he spent the next day making a list of all the reasons why he couldn't go to China, why it's impossible to preach. He was just making a joke. The Prabhupada said, no, you have to go to China. So he, he didn't go as a in dhoti, but he went undercover a little bit, found some connections, and he opened up China. It was wonderful. And then China itself opened up. Anyway, it's a long story. And so it was possible to really preach there. So there's devotees there, who, they wanted to become devotees. And there was a young boy, maybe your age. And he said, Gurudev, I can't chant properly. We can't. They have trouble with the R's. So Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, what should I do? He said, don't worry, you just keep chanting like that, trying to improve, and everything will be all right. Because Bhava Grahi Janardana. This is the last line in a verse about pronunciation. He says, I forget the Sanskrit, but he says the ignorant, the fool will say, Vishnaya, Om Namo Vishnaya. You know, just like we say, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya. This is called the vocative form. When you're addressing someone directly in Sanskrit, you use this form, you may not. But this uneducated person who's a sincere devotee, he didn't know that, so he applied it to everything. So, but Vishnu is an exception. You shouldn't say Vishnaya, say Vishnave. I think Vishnave is the vocative. So the verse says the fool will say Vishnaya and the pundit will say Vishnave, but they both get the same result because Krishna is looking for the mood if they both say it sincerely, you see. So he said, you just chant sincerely. And this devotee eventually pronounced perfectly, you know, Hare Krishna, learned how to pronounce. And he was chanting 64 rounds a day. He was getting very advanced. So that's the one of the great blessings of the Sankirtan movement, is that there's no prerequisite. Anyone from any background, any birth, any socio-economic strata, whatever it may be, can participate and join in. And that's why Prabhupada had full faith in this teaching of Lord Chaitanya. And he went to America, which, you know, there's a poem that when he landed in September of '65 in New York port. And before that he was in Boston. They stopped in Boston and came back down to Manhattan. So he got off the boat and looked around and then back on the boat and he wrote a poem. And he said, you must have some reason to bring me to this horrible place, Krishna. You know, I don't know how I'm going to do it. You know, if you make the power of my speaking such that they'll understand, then only then it'll happen. So I'm like a puppet in your hand. So if you want me to dance, oh Lord, oh Lord, make me dance in your hand. Then you just move me. You know, a very wonderful poem. And he really felt that way. And Krishna gave him the power to speak in such a way. Not right away. You know, it was a little difficult the first year. You know, but then he was able to found the movement in '66. In New York, and it expanded from there. So we're benefited by that, and this self-control has to be there for the householders, and the sacrifice. So that sacrifice, Prabhupada, he just chanted. He had no maganga. I've seen the early pictures. He had a little half of a bongo drum. I used to play bongo drums. You should play them like this. He held one like this, and he was drumming very wonderful beats because he played the mridanga. But those first kirtans you can hear. And then the story of the first record. Some of you may have heard this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. That was the first crew from 26 Second Avenue. And there was a gentleman who was making records, you know, of John Kennedy speaking and this and that, you know. And he heard, the devotees became a little famous because Allen Ginsberg, who was a very famous poet, he befriended the devotees, and he himself was chanting Hare Krishna. He came back he didn't know what he was chanting, but he liked chanting it. So that was good because he popularized. So he said, oh, I want to make a record of you guys. He said, yeah, Prabhupada was really into it. But we had no drums. They had the little bongo. He said, well, we'll do whatever we can. The night before, Krishna inspired one fellow to come to the temple with a mridanga. Where to get a mridanga? I mean, Lower East Side, 1966. I know where he got the mridanga because I used to live there a few years later in that same area. And there was an Indian musical instrument store right around the corner from the temple on First Street. First Avenue, they were on Second Avenue. I used to go there. I bought some flutes there. I used to play the flute. Maybe one day I'll bring the flute. You can play. And so they had all kinds of instruments, so he probably got it there. So he came to the temple. I think it's his first trip. And Prabhupada saw the drum and said, oh, bring it. And he started playing that drum with such expertise that the devotees' jaws dropped. Where did this come from? You know, Prabhupada could cook. He does all these things. He was learned as a child to play the mridanga. So he was playing, and eventually the boy wanted his drum back. So the next morning they were going to make the record. So they asked him, oh, if you could please bring it back tomorrow, you know, we can use it on this record we're making. So they didn't have much faith. The guy wasn't really into it so much, but sure enough, the next morning he came with that drum. And that's the drum you hear on the record. Prabhupada's playing it so expertly. Nobody could play like that, you know, except Prabhupada. So Krishna made that arrangement. And Prabhupada has, in that poem, he writes, I'm completely unqualified, I don't, you know, but I have great faith in the holy name. And that's, you know, he showed that. He would just basically, you know, speak a little bit, philosophy, and people understood something. And then he would chant, and the fortunate people would join in. you know, and it became a thing. It became popular in, you know, in the culture, in the East Village culture. And so that chanting was very, very purifying. And then the devotees went out the first time. Nobody wanted to go out in public. You know, Prabhupada said, no, we're going out. He went to the park, sat down, he started chanting. So that's the Sankirtan Jagya described here, the sacrifice of the age. All right, any comments or questions on these qualities? The next are for the...
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol, Vijay Krishna. He's in Portugal. Every night he's here. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you very much, Dravida Prabhu. The quote from the purport about charity is, quote, charity in the mode of goodness is recommended by the scriptures, but charity in the modes of passion and ignorance is not recommended because it is simply a waste of money, end quote. So my question is, why is it that charity in the moods of passion and ignorance, it is simply a waste of money?
Well, the idea is that in the mode of passion and ignorance often means that you're giving the charity to persons who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, and they'll just misspend it. It'll just further their entanglement in whatever they're doing, and the idea is that Lakshmi, we begin with kind of the default that everything belongs to Krishna. Ishabhashamidam sarvam, the first verse of the first mantra of the Ishopanishad. Ishabhashamidam sarvam, yatkinchit jagatyam yagat. That everything is owned and controlled by the Isha, the controller, Krishna. We're entitled to have what we need for our maintenance. But if we take more than our share, then we become thieves, like that. So anything that the householder has over and above, what he needs to maintain, should be dedicated to the ultimate good, which will be good for him and for those who he helps. The charity, money is like a kind of energy. It's kind of a Shakti. You can do things with money. You can hire people, you can buy things, you can go places and all kinds of stuff, right? So that Shakti, just like our vital energy, is our mental energy. It can be directed toward matter, toward more further entanglement, which is the default in this material world. Or, with proper knowledge and faith, it can be used for uplifting of oneself and for others. And when you have money that's not essential for your upkeep, then that money can be used for furtherance of Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada said, spreading all over the world, which will be good for you, as well as anyone who comes in contact with the facility that's bought with that money. Just like now, there's this tremendous project, many of you have heard of it, called the TOVP, Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. My contribution there, I once gave a little donation when I was there, but that wasn't my main contribution. My main contribution is that word "the" just before the Vedic Planetarium. Because in the morning walk, Prabhupada, and he oftentimes would leave these "thes" out, as in Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, which is understandable, the second language. So he was taking a walk, and yes, we're going to build this big, huge temple, predicted by Nityananda. There's a whole thing, Temple of Vedic Planetarium. And that was dutifully transcribed in the morning walk, and that was what everyone was saying, Temple of Vedic Planetarium. I said, we can't say the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. Everyone's going to put the "the" in there anyway, and they'll think we made a big mistake. So we'll call it, I was hoping the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, but at least I got the one in the Vedic Planetarium. No one puts the "the" at the beginning, which is okay, Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But, so it requires so much Lakshmi, And the householder who was showing the great example of this saintly is Ambarish Prabhu. He was the grandson of Henry Ford or something, and he came into a big inheritance. The first thing he did was help buy the Detroit Temple, which is like a palatial building that was in kind of a squirrely neighborhood, and so it was several $1 million worth, and they got it for like $300,000. But that was some money, you know, that he needed to, and some other wealthy lady, devotee, contributed. But that's nothing compared to what other things he's done. He built the first samadhi of Srila Prabhupada, you know, the samadhi structure in Mayapur. It's incredible. It's like, it looks like a something from Italy, because the architect was Matsya, who's a devotee from Italy, and it looked like a little Vatican or something, you know. But that was nothing compared to what he gave for the TOVP. You know, $70 million or something, you know, a lot of millions. Plus he's helping because he has such credibility. He can talk to the most wealthy people in India and elsewhere. He says, yeah, you should also give. I gave a big part of my, you know, inheritance. So he has tremendous, you know, stature in doing that. So he is, you know, kind of burned away, you know, showed the way of it. And today, or tomorrow, and the next day, there's a whole festival. They're finally bringing the beautiful Murti of Prabhupada into the TOVP. And they're going to install them in his, you know, like we have here in Assam, but, you know, much more elaborate. So that's, you can see online, right? You can get online. With that Mayapur is, what, 50 or 80 miles north of Calcutta. It's in Bengal, you know. And it's right on the Ganges River. Like tomorrow. Today or tomorrow, right? It's happening in several days. Okay, so that's charity. All right, let us go on. We have a few minutes.
Thank you, Dravida Prabhu. Thank you very much for your answer. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. I'm sorry, it wasn't as spectacular as usual. I want to try to...
Monumental today. Again.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Okay, we're going on. Charity, and the sacrifice. We did that sacrifice. Hare Krishna. Svadhyaya is the next, which is Vedic study, near the bottom of 619, second paragraph up. Svadhyaya, Vedic study, is meant for brahmacharya, or student life. Brahmacharis should have no connection with women. They should live a life of celibacy and engage the mind in the study of Vedic literature for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. This is called svadhyaya. Tapas, or austerity, is especially meant for the retired life. One should not remain, this is the Vanaprastha, one should not remain a householder throughout his whole life. He must always remember that there are 4 divisions of life: brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. So after grahastha, householder life, one should retire. If one lives for 100 years, he should spend 25 years in student life, 25 in householder life, 25 in retired life, and 25 in the renounced order of life. These are the regulations of the Vedic religious discipline. A man retired from household life must practice austerities of the body, mind, and tongue. That is tapasya. The entire Varnashram Dharma society is meant for tapasya. Without tapasya or austerity, no human being can get liberation. The theory that there is no need of austerity in life, that one can go on speculating and everything will be nice, is recommended neither in the Vedic literature nor in the Bhagavad Gita. Such theories are manufactured by show bottle spiritualists who are trying to gather more followers. If there are restrictions, rules, and regulations, people will not become attracted. Therefore, those who want followers in the name of religion, just to have a show only, don't restrict the lives of their students, nor their own lives. But that method is not approved by the Vedas. So this is a theme Prabhupada would often address in his books, is the bogus yogis, you know, the spiritualists are taking advantage of the ignorant Americans who have all this money and who might be interested in yoga and get involved in, but they don't really advance. They're cheated. That's mentioned in the beginning of Bhagavatam. Prayanalpayashak sabya kalavasmin yugainuna manda samanda matayo manda bhagya upadruta. That in this age, we don't live that long. In previous ages, they lived for 1,000 years, 10,000 years. Now, if you live for 100 years, it's very unusual. And if you're interested in, and generally people are very lazy in the matter of spiritual life. There's a handful here. There used to be a much smaller handful. I was given this class for 30 years, and we used to have, if we had 3 people, it was a big crowd, you know, and no internet, nothing like that. But compared to the thousands of people who just go to, you know, a baseball game, it's rare that someone is interested seriously in spiritual life. So that's manda, That means manda, lazy. So manda madayo. And if you are interested, then your chances are you'll be misguided by some of these bogus yogis who want to just cheat you and take your money. Manda bhagya upadrata. And so people are unfortunate and always disturbed in mind. You know, because of the pandemic, people are more on edge, much more than usual. You hear these intentionally, loud vehicles, either cars or even motorcycles, without the muffler. They take the muffler off, so they'll agitate your mind like anything. Or maybe the whole goal is to knock off the alarms in the cars that go by, so that they'll start going off. What is that? This is the age we live in. Always some agitation of the mind, So this is not a very good age for yoga and that practice of yoga. And therefore, we need a process that we can do. Lord Chaitanya came and gave this congregational chanting, which is feasible. So, let's see. The theory that there is no need of austerity, that life that can go on chanting will nice is recommended neither in the Veda nor in the Bhagavad Gita. Such theories are manufactured by show bottle spiritualists who are trying to gather more followers. If there are restrictions, rules, and regulations, people will not become attracted. Therefore, those who want followers in the name of religion, just to have a show only, don't restrict the lives of their students, nor their own lives. But that method is not approved in the Vedas. As far as the Brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow the principle, but every member, be he in the brahmachari ashram, grahastha ashram, vanapasta ashram, or sannyasa ashram. One should be very simple and straightforward. Ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. One should not think that since the spirit spark is never killed, even after the killing of the body, there's no harm in killing animals for sense gratification. People are now addicted to eating animals, in spite of having an ample supply of grains, fruits, and milk. There's no necessity for animal killing. This injunction is for everyone. When there is no alternative, one may kill an animal, but it should be offered in sacrifice. At any rate, when there is an ample food supply for humanity, persons who are desiring to make advancement in spiritual realization should not commit violence to animals. Real ahimsa means not checking anyone's progressive life. The animals are also making progress in their evolutionary life by transmigrating from one category of animal life to another. If a particular animal is killed, then his progress is checked. If an animal is staying in a particular body for so many days or so many years and is untimely killed, then he has to come back again in that form of life to complete the remaining days in order to be promoted to another species of life. So their progress should not be checked simply to satisfy one's palate. That's called ahimsa. Satyam. The word means that one should not distort the truth for some personal interest. In Vedic literature, there are some difficult passages, but the meaning or the purpose should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. That is the process for understanding the Vedas. Shruti means that one should hear from the authority. One should not construe some interpretation for his personal interest. There are so many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita that misinterpret the original text. The real import of the word should be presented, and that should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. Akrodha means to check anger. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant, for once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is a product of the mode of passion and lust, so one who is transcendentally situated should check himself from anger. Apaishanam means that one should not find fault with others or correct them unnecessarily. Of course, to call a thief is not fault-finding, but to call an honest person a thief is very much offensive for one who is making advancement in spiritual life. Ri, that's another quality, means that one should be very modest and must not perform some act which is abominable. Achapalam, determination, means that one should not be agitated or frustrated in some attempt. There may be failure in some attempt, but one should not be sorry for that. You should make progress with patience and determination. The word tejas used here is meant for the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas should always be very strong to be able to give protection to the weak. They should not pose themselves as nonviolent. If violence is required, they must exhibit it. But a person who is able to curb down his enemy may, under certain conditions, show forgiveness. He may excuse minor offenses. Shaucham means cleanliness, not only in mind and body, but in one's dealings also. It is especially meant for the mercantile people who should not deal in the black market. Nati manita, not expecting honor, applies to the Shudras, the worker class, which are considered, according to the Vedic injunction, to be the lowest of the 4 classes. They should not be puffed up with unnecessary prestige or honor and should remain in their own status. It is the duty of the Shudras to offer respect to the higher class for the upkeep of the social order. So, all these 26 qualifications mentioned are transcendental qualities. They should be cultivated according to the different statuses of social and occupational order. The purport is that even though material conditions are miserable, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization. So we'll leave this, the next verse for next time. Will be Monday. Just a little review here. A civilization in which people are trying to cultivate these qualities, and they exhibit them to some degree, is actually somewhere where you can make spiritual progress, where you can peacefully live. But when you find people, cultivating just the opposite qualities, becoming angry at the slightest slight, and not being satisfied with their position, and forget about charity, cheating and exploitation going on everywhere, then the society becomes very hellish. And without proper spiritual guidance, which means training and education, bringing up the children to these, then society can go completely off the rails. And Kali Yuga eventually does go off the rails and becomes very hellish, and Krishna comes at the end and kills so many demons, So it's a struggle, because the natural forces of this age are toward degradation. And Srila Prabhupada started this movement on the basis of his spiritual master's order and Lord Chaitanya's prediction that Krishna consciousness will actually flourish. It says in, I think, Brahmanda Purana, one of the Puranas, for 10,000 years in this Kali Yuga, before Kali Yuga really takes hold and could be degraded. So we're only at the beginning of this. It's only 500 years or so since Lord Chaitanya came, a little more than 50 years since this movement started. But we should take advantage of it, of all the things we have, the deities, the devotees, of course the books, the instructions, and the Hare Krishna mantra. So we can become advanced and have some shelter from this degradations of this age, and we can become forces for good in society. That's the idea. All right, any final comment or question? All right, we'll end on a nice little sweet poem. Yes, go ahead, Babu. Yeah, you need, so because we have an audience. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
When you talk about knowledge, right? Knowledge in general about in Bhagavad Gita. So what kind of knowledge I should develop?
That you should develop.
Yeah.
You should get one of these books if you can. We have these for sale.
Okay.
And we have many others. And you can read it systematically. And we have these classes, both evening and morning. And this is the most important knowledge, the knowledge of who we really are, who God is, what this world is, and what the relationships are with them, and how we can live in this world to make progress toward, as I mentioned at the beginning, actually breaking free from the bondage of birth and death and returning to our original home in the spiritual world. This is all part of we don't know any of this, but those who are seers of the truth, who have been enlightened from within, and great yogis and wise men, our acharyas, they've given voluminous books. Our spiritual master works so hard. I've been working on these books for over 50 years as an editor, helping put them out.
Yes,
and they're just very inspiring, because they're you feel, as here, of course, we have Krishna speaking to us, and if you just accept that, this is the words of God. When he says, Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, that the greatest thing, the essence of all the teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, is just give up all other dharmas and just surrender to me, and I'll protect you. Everything will be auspicious. Then that's kind of the beginning. Then we have another book that starts from that beginning, Srimad Bhagavatam. But it's a whole lifestyle, and it's a systematic process that always works if we take it up sincerely. So that's the knowledge you can cultivate.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's we don't charge anything. You come to the temple here. We even have food for you if you want your prasadam. And so take advantage. We have some nice holidays coming up. Govardhan Puja. But this is new Govardhan, so we do it. Of course, the COVID may crimp it a little bit, but it'll be a nice celebration. So just you live in the city here?
Right. So my question is Srimad Bhagavatam.
Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay, then what are the books?
Oh, we have more. Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a very advanced book about Lord Chaitanya's Leela and teachings.
Okay.
And we have a book called The Nectar of Devotion, which is an English translation of our spiritual master translated a book called the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is a very systematic presentation of the process and the goal, the experiences of bhakti that we can have by Rupa Goswami. So we have a whole library, and you can get, and feel free. And of course online, you can hear the classes. Okay?
Okay.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And thanks for the question. I didn't mention my books. You heard about this, Michelle? These are Vyas Puja books. Anyway, if anyone's interested, these are special. The price is right. They're free. And anyway, they're very beautiful books that we put out glorifying Srila Prabhupada. And we had some extras, so I'm giving them out for free. If you right after the kirtan, which we'll have now.